That being said, man, this final chapter, chapter 18, where we're back into the life of Hafid and kind of connecting the dots. A lot of fun in here, a lot of great things to kind of lean into. So, by all means, anything from chapter 18 or anything before from any of the scrolls, today is wrap up. What do you guys have? Celeste, your mic's hot, so I'm putting you on the spot.
Oh my God. Well, what I was I'm going to start with the basics, in that the whatever you call his name, the guy who was the owner of the palace, whatever it's called, the successful older man. Uh, he had in his heart knew that someone would come, even though he was really at the end of his own life. He had faith that someone would show up. And what's interesting is his servant was quick to dismiss the person who arrived instead of being clearly, I would say, just say simply receptive to someone who had shown up who didn't appear like you would think he would, someone who is successful. And here's the cool part is that's one lesson in our business, is that we should not judge who we're speaking with, no matter what, because even though they appear one way, and I'm going to go down to the basics of, it's not just about what the physical attire is, but perhaps how they speak or how they show up with what you judge as they're not qualified. You should not judge. The best thing you can do is welcome and get them through your funnel. One of your funnels is having them talk to a lender, because you don't know what you don't know. They could have a pile of cash sitting in their account because they just won the lottery and they're from a poor area. That's how they dress, whatever that is. So, I mean, just that in itself, this part of the chapter said to me, I mean, I know people that have lots and lots of wealth, millions. And if you met them, you would never know that that's who they are. So I also want you to hear me on this, because I'm going nuts on this one. When people show up and they are not like you, I don't care what color they are, what religion they are, what skin tone they have, whatever. How about instead coming from a point of curiosity and ask questions and let them answer you? Don't talk over them. Let them speak. And I was just going over this last night in my mentoring session, that when you are with people, what questions are you asking to learn about the people you're in front of? This chapter is, it starts with just that concept that I wish all of us would just learn. Just because someone shows up and they don't look like you doesn't mean there is not value in them. They have value, whether you know it or not. Even if it's not with them, they know people. Okay, I'm done on my soapbox. That's my moment.
It's a great moment, though, Celeste. Also, not just about the judgment of people that show up you don't know. I'm always talking to everybody about calling their database, engaging the people that are in their phone. And I can't tell you how many times I hear people tell me how invaluable their sphere of influence is. It's crazy how often that comes up. So, Miss Shara, you are next up. The floor is yours.
Okay, I went a different direction, but to Celeste's point, I'm going to share a real life story, because when my father was an aspiring banker when I was very young, and we moved as many as 3 times in 1 year with all these promotions. And we had made this move outside of Houston, and this was in the early 70s. And he came home from the bank one day and told this incredible story that had happened to a man. He had gone into one of the high rises in Houston. He sat down, wanted a cup of coffee. Nobody would wait on him. And he was, an older gentleman, waited till the shift changed. A waitress came in and said, "How can I help you?" He ordered a cup of coffee and he got up and gave her $100 tip and left. He was an old rice farmer worth bajillions of dollars, or maybe an oil guy. I don't remember. I was very young, but it always impacted me that you never judge the book by its cover. And so, to Celeste's point, that has stayed with me my whole entire life. And I've measured myself in responses over time by that story because it was so impressionable at a very young age. Where I went with this was Hafid had gone through this amazing life, had accumulated incredible wealth, had done everything that he promised to do, had set out to do, had lived his life with integrity. He had dispersed of all of his wealth, but it seems like maybe his purpose had waned, or he missed, just got lost in the waiting for this person to show up. And there was no more purpose. And he and Erasmus were both just sitting there wasting away in the garden. And Erasmus was to inherit everything, but he served at such a high level that when they did qualify, the one, the twinkle in his eye came and he rose to the task. He awakened. It was like an awakening. And then when I read the end of the book, the part 2, he was like only 60 years old. I'm like, dude, you've achieved all of this by this time in life. You've met every obstacle, you've overcome, you've lived the scrolls, you've done this amazing, perfect life, but yet you're withering in the waiting. And he awakened to the wisdom that he had and what he needed to give back after he dispersed all of his wealth. So I feel like it takes us kind of full circle where he started, where he was hungry, where he overcame everything with purpose and lived that to the fullest. But then in the final chapter, it had to take an awakening to bring him back to all that he needed to sow and to give back. We can't lose sight at every level of where we are.
Absolutely. Who else? What else from the content? Miss Carrie, you're up, and then I can't wait to hear from Doug.
18. So when I was reading 18, there was a part where he was talking about the guy came to the door and he was all raggedy and he had the robe, right? And everything. And so that conversation was so very interesting to me. I felt like once the guy walked up there and he was talking to Hafid, and like he was like, oh, who are you? And what is this? And, you know, the guy starts telling the story and Hafid just lights up. And in my head, that visual was very like, it was like Hafid just saw, like, it was like the dawning of whatever. Like it was almost, I felt like it was almost like he had like a vision a long time ago, or a dream a long time ago. And when that guy came to the door and he said the few things that he said, he was like, oh my God, this is it. This is holy heck, right? And just to say about, you know, people the way they look sometimes, like I put it like Celeste was saying, you know, there's people even in real estate that have made tons and tons of money, right? And that, you know, just we're not making the money now, right? But those people are super intelligent and they have what it takes. And so did the celebrities. And so did this guy, right? What was his name? Erasmus or whatever his name was. And then he came there. Well, but yeah, the guy. So he was like, right. And he was all ragged and he had the robe.
Oh, that would be Paul. Yes, Paul.
Oh, I'm sorry, Paul. So came through and said those things. And it was like, oh my God, that's the, you know, it was just like a whole full circle. Oh my God, dream. Like this is God right now. Thank you for that. You know, it's an amazing story, etc.
Yeah. His energy and his enthusiasm was almost like this was going to be world changing, wasn't it? Mm. So, Doug, what do you have on that topic?
Okay, I've got a couple of things. First, when Paul is telling the story of of him getting rejected in Damascus and then going back to Jerusalem and getting rejected again. And then he's in the marketplace and he sees these guys selling doves and lamb for sacrifice, and he gets like a message from the voice that talked to him the first time. And even Erasmus now jumps in and wants to know, well, what did it say? So it's a voice of guidance again. And I think that's one of the things that this book really teaches about in the last chapter, is about always asking for guidance. What do I do next? This is not working. What do I do now? There will always be that voice, that mentor, that person that shows up, that divine appointment. So Paul is actually going after it. I think we always have to have that kind of faith in ourselves. If there's a closed door, there's an open door somewhere. So you just keep going for that open door. You don't let the closed door stop you. Now, Paul had just been rejected by everybody in Damascus and everybody in Jerusalem. He doesn't know a lot of other people at this point. So this is kind of setting him up for, if you don't know, Paul's ministry was not to the Jews, which was his own family. His ministry and his calling was to the rest of the world. So he had to be shut out of his own family in order to go do what he was really called to do.
By the way, Doug, this chapter 18, and these pieces you're going through about the road to Damascus and the shutout of Jerusalem and the story and actual true history behind that, where else is that written?
Where else is the story of Paul written?
Yeah.
Besides the Bible?
Well, what chapter or what book, if you will?
Oh, it's in the book of Acts. It is in the book of Acts. I've got a side story if you want to hear it.
Go.
There was a discovery just made in Mecca of several books. Several of them are golden books. They're about this big. The pages are this big, okay? And they're hooked together by little rings, and it's a gold book. So when you open it up, it's like this, and it's written in Hebrew. It's in Old Paleo Hebrew, and actually it's first century Hebrew. And there's several of them that are gold and several of them that are lead. So these are well-preserved books that they've just found, but nobody's ever translated them until now because they were just recently discovered. And there's a man in Kerrville that has pictures of them, and he has a translation team, and they're working on them. And it is about why Paul had to go to Damascus. Why did he go to Damascus? Nobody's ever answered that question, and now we know the answer. So these books are about the people that were living in Damascus that were displaced from Jerusalem because they were the real high priesthood. They were rejected from the temple and replaced by Herod by a different group of people that were not the real high priests. And that's what those books are about. Pretty interesting.
I think that the translation is going to come down to drink your Ovaltine.
Well, I want to go back into the content here a moment as we're talking about this, because early on in this process, as Hafid was asking the master who took him in almost as a son, and he was a camel keeper until he said, I want to be a salesman. I want to sell. And he was told by Pathros, true wealth is of the heart, not of the purse. And so he had to learn that. And as he is in the town of Bethlehem, seeing the child in the manger and the parents freezing, after painful moments of indecision, the would-be seller of goods walked to his animal. He carefully untied the knot, opened his pack, and withdrew the robe. He unrolled it and rubbed his hands over the material. The red dye glowed in the candlelight, and he could see the mark of Pathros and the mark of Tola on its underside. The circle and the square and the star. How many times he had held this robe in his tired arms in the past 3 days? It seems as if he knew every weave of every fiber. This was indeed a robe of quality. He closed his eyes and sighed. Then he walked swiftly towards the small family, knelt on the straw beside the infant, and gently removed first the father's tattered cloak and then the mother's from the manger. He handed each back to its owner. Both were shocked at Hafid's boldness to react. Then Hafid opened his precious red robe and wrapped it gently around the sleeping child. That act of kindness, that act of giving, that act of service, that coming from that place. And we see this time and time again. And then here we come back as we're wrapping this up, and it's the same robe, the same cloak that was there at the bottom of the cross in the example that's read in the content here, that he brought, and that's what he had when he saw the owner of these chests of these scrolls. And so the thing I want to point out as we're looking at this in this content, what has truly, if we're going to use the word sales, what has been one of the absolute grandest examples of successful sales on the planet? And it was Paul, who was the head of the church, of the Christian church, if you will. Think about how many lives, how many stories, how much that has expanded since Paul got his hands on these mythical scrolls. Jeanette, you're up. I see you're hot.
Oh, no, accident. Sorry.
I still see you're hot. There's no accident by that. What else do you guys have?
This is amazing. I remember thinking, it's an amazing end to this book. I remember thinking at the beginning and seeing that, I went, that's got to be the robe that Jesus would wear. And because it had, all the detail of it, it was seamless. It was amazing. And when you're looking at the times then, people didn't have, if they had 2 sets of clothes, they were rich in many ways. But the point is, you can make a story out of it, or you can realize, to have that kind of quality, and then to have all of those qualities come through, and how things in our lives weave together in ways we had never expected. And, knowing that every one of us is unique. Every one of us has a design and a purpose, and to know that each of our design and purpose is just as important as this design and purpose. And the reason we're here is that something in each of us knows that, and we can't be denied unless we agree with it. We can't be denied. And even if we agree with it for a season, something comes and fires you up again. You can't stay there. You can't stay. We can't stay there. So there's a life and a fire in us that is so valuable. And we are the greatest salesman, each one of us, however we do it, whether it's something that we work with our families, whether these principles are life-changing. And I took your recommendation, Russ, so that I did put this in so that when I open my calendar in the morning and I see what I'm supposed to do, I went in and I actually took those, seven scrolls, those first 7 scrolls, but then I also added the scroll marked X in this so that I read that in the morning as well. So it's at the end of it. So I want that to be, that to be a part.
Excellent. And I love that you're implementing a system to help you build a habit. We don't create habits in vacuums. And this piece on faith and belief, you've got to know it at your core. The universe is going to test your resolve. The universe is going to test your belief in everything. Your belief in yourself, your belief in your abilities, your belief in your faith. It's always going to be tested. And yet those who persist, as we've read in previous content, who keep that faith no matter what. I'm just getting a text from somebody who's not in this room, who's struggling with his faith and his ability to perform in real estate. You got to lean into it. And again, as we've talked before, you've got to borrow others. So I want to shift into a place that we're all going to be doing that together. And that is this content, Ninja Selling. We start this on Monday. It's 30 minutes a day to really absorb some of the most important content in real estate. 90% of this book, folks in this room that have been in my coaching world previously, you've had bits and pieces of it. A lot of what I used to teach on stage in front of large rooms was out of this book. And know that Diana Kokoska was in Larry Kendall's backyard. They knew each other and worked together a lot. So there's a lot of crossover. So I want to make sure today, guys, that you really lean in to being here and committed every day for the next 45 to 60 days, because that's how slow it's going to take. There's 25 chapters, and some pieces we may take 2-3 days of diving and digging through it. Number two, there's other real estate agents you care about. This goes to that faith like we've talked about before, Carrie. There's more than enough for everybody. It's a life of abundance. It's an attitude of abundance. I truly believe it's that way. And here's why. I want to just get into some detail on quantum physics. Everything is energy. Everything. Money, currency is the true root word. Current, energy. We've applied this tangible paper representation, so we think it's limited. It's an unlimited resource. There's no such thing as get your piece of the pie. There's no such thing as for every winner, there has to be a loser when it comes to income and revenue and money. It is energy. And let's just think this through. How much energy is there in a single atom? Something so microscopic we can't even see. I would recommend you ask the people of 1940s Hiroshima, because they learned how much energy is in one atom. And by the way, there's like 6 trillion atoms in each one of you. So the massive abundance everywhere. So I want you guys to share with others. You will do better over the next 6 weeks if you have accountability buddies that you've invited, that you're helping. I learn more and lock in more from teaching than I ever do from being a student. This is your opportunity to have people around you that you can help and teach and lead through this process. So 3 minutes left. This room is broker agnostic. It is industry agnostic. This content also is. It may talk real estate. It applies to anybody and everybody who is serving consumers in a sales perspective. So what are you guys hearing, and what are you going to do about it? Give me some ideas over the next 2 minutes. Celeste.
Well, it seems to me that, we get a lot from these sessions, but yet we leave this room at 9:30 and we walk into our lives for the rest of the day, and we kind of forget what this moment, this half an hour is for our business and ourselves, our psyche. And I think that I would have to add to what Jeanette was saying is putting together cliff notes that you keep with you. They should be front and center throughout your day. And even in the book, it's talking about reading each of these scrolls 3 times a day. You know,
Yep.
the first 2 times are reading, the third time at night, you're actually saying it out loud. I'm going to go back to one of the things you and I and all of whoever was there, when we learned about writing down what we are grateful for, they talked about reading them at the end of the day. Why do you think that is? Because your subconscious is working on those things that you say are important to you.
Yep.
And by speaking it out into the universe, you're hearing it, and your inner self is actually believing what you say. So how cool is that this book is saying the same thing, and yet it was, you know, they said written 1,000+ years ago.
In the middle of this content, I want to give you guys one other nugget that we are going to implement, because you said something mission critical, Celeste, at the beginning of, we do this and then we're here for 30 minutes and we go on with our life rather than implementing. Know that I am starting, and I'm glad Don jumped in, 50 Fridays. The first Friday of every month, right now at 9:30 Central, this room will stay open. You guys will stay here, and I want you to stay and have conversations the rest of that Friday. We're going to, as a room, as a group, spend all day in conversation on those Fridays. So make sure the first Friday of every month, you block out, you clear out. The goal is for every single person in that room to have a minimum of 50 conversations that day, which will transform your month. Okay? And Don and I are talking about some awards, some prizes, some fun, some competition. We just had that conversation today, guys. So I want to make sure, one, this, and then that first Friday of February, which is February 7th, you guys are ready to spend the entire day here doing the work and having fun together. Don Hobbs, your mic's hot and you're here. What do you got, brother?
I was just going to come in and say 2 things. One is I'm excited about starting the book next Monday. Can't wait for this book. I think it's a great read. I'm so pleased with the choice that we do it every year. I think it's foundational. I think it's the best book in real estate currently, until Dustin gets his book out, until Gene Frederick gets his book out. But right now, it's the best book in real estate. And the second thing was, I was excited about yes, I just dropped the name, the Friday, 50 Fridays. And Maria has already been given the assignment. We're going to put that right on the calendar. It'll be on the Epic calendar starting later today, I'm sure. She's not feeling well, by the way, everybody. Give her a little, send a little positive energy and healing energy to Miss Maria. She's not feeling all that cool right now. But I'm excited about it. And I feel fairly certain, I seem to believe with 99.6% certainty that we will have Larry Kendall at some point during the reading of this book. And that'll not only create a great event for us, it will create a great recruiting opportunity, which is a little bit separate from the subject of this meeting, but not a bad thing to talk about. Okay. So excited about all that.
Awesome. Anybody else have anything else they want to get in the room before we jump on another Freedom Friday? And by the way, the 9 are meeting at, let me check my schedule, because the key is the half hour after that. At 11. So 11:30 back in this room for those that wish to work on business building, recruiting. We have our conversation open to everybody in this room every Friday, 11:30 Central, and it's going to be accountability as a part of it.